All right, we're going to get started this morning. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our July Legislative Action meeting. We're glad to have you here. We've got people still coming into the room. I believe we had over 70 people RSVP. So as we've talked about in the past, our ledge meetings via Zoom have been successful. So we will continue to do Zoom, at least for these meetings. So we're going to go ahead and get started. And right off the bat, we're going to ask Shannon Dunkel from Congressman Jay Obernolte's office to go ahead and unmute and give us her update.
Good morning. It says Christopher Scott, but that's okay. I'm just going to give Mark a hard time. It's okay.
Oops. Sorry about that. I've got Shannon Dunkel. So
well, I changed the at least I changed the title though. Sorry about that.
You did. That's good. I appreciate that. Thanks, Mark.
At least the agenda that I'm looking at's good, right?
You said my name correctly, so we'll take that.
All right, let's move it along, Shannon.
All right, good morning, everybody. So on behalf of Congressman Obernolte, I'll just provide a very brief update. So in his time in the state assembly, Congressman Obernolte passed more legislation than any other lawmaker in the Inland Empire, so regardless of party. So he is proud now. So within the few months that he has been in Congress, 2 of his bills have already passed through the House of Representatives, and they are now on the Senate side. And they both of those bills had broad bipartisan support. And so the congressman is really proud of that. So those 2 bills are HR 3284 and HR 3844. And both of those bills prepares our government for the cyber warfare of tomorrow, something that our country desperately needs, and we need to kind of shift our focus into the cybersecurity area. So the congressman was very proud that those 2 bills had passed through. So now we're just waiting for the Senate to make that decision. Another big issue has been the illegal marijuana grows. And I believe Kim will probably give a good update on that. But the congressman did do a town hall in Phelan over the weekend. They were talking about illegal marijuana grows. And he did send another letter to the Attorney General, Merrick Garland, putting more pressure. So we will be continuing to put pressure from the federal end and make sure that we are engaged as much as possible. But let us know if you have any questions, and we're here to help you guys.
I know that I saw last night as Jay was, they were doing some flyovers to look at the illegal grows, and wow. There's some large ones out there. And then we had at the Republican Central Committee last week, the district attorney come and speak. And they're having some success in chasing down, going through the people who own the land, the people that are renting the land, the waters, things like that. So they do have a plan of attack. Mm-hmm. And you know, what a big problem.
It's a huge problem. Yeah. And the congressman's doing anything he can. It just falls kind of on the state and county. But right. We're going to put as much pressure as we can on the federal side and hopefully alleviate the issue that's happening.
Hey, can you let everybody know the 2 committees that Jay was put on in Congress, especially the cyber security?
Yeah. So he was assigned to three committees. So he has the House Committee on Budget, which we know Jay is great at the budget, natural resources, and then science, space, and technology.
Okay. Yeah. So when I saw that he was going to be on the cyber one, I thought, well, great, finally, somebody that really gets it.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah. So anyway, do we have any questions? Anybody see any questions? Am I missing anything, Mark or Marshall? Okay. Nope. All right, if you have a question for later, just put it in the chat and we will answer that for you. All right, then we're going to go ahead and move on to Rebecca Tennyson from Senator Scott Wilk's office.
Well, good morning, everyone. And things are very busy up in Sacramento. Since we last spoke, when we last had this meeting, the budget bill had just been passed, and it was a huge $268 billion budget bill. But the issue was that a lot of the details weren't in it. So since then, the trailer bills are passing, and so now we're getting a little bit better idea of what's in it. So I'm gonna let you know a few of the ones that have already, of the trailer bills that have already passed, but just take note that a lot are all day-to-day trailer bills are going through. So we'll even know a lot more tonight. But SB 152 regarding elections makes changes to the current recall process to allow a recall election to be called sooner by authorizing the legislature to waive the joint legislative budget committee's cost review time period of 30 days under certain conditions. And this bill also authorizes $35 million for the Secretary of State for recall activities, of which more than 17 million carries the potential for partisan abuse. The Senator Wilk opposed that. AB 130 regarding education. This directs billions of dollars for education related efforts. There was Senator Wilk and the Republican caucus attempted to remove a very problematic provision that extends the moratorium of non-classroom based charter schools with compared to existing law. The non-classroom charter schools will not be able to operate. They will still be under the moratorium till 22. So Senator Wilk really tried to remove that out of the bill, but 99% of the education bill is very good. SB 139, the Golden State stimulus. We've talked about this before, but in the final trailer bill, it has been adjusted up to the income of up to $75,000 per year. Will receive maybe a $600 stimulus from Governor Newsom. However, Senator Wilk did oppose that, as he believes there are better ways to spend the state's excess funds. Because this year we got an excess in funds. Those are one-time funds. That's, monies came from the federal government. And so we have to be very diligent with what we do with that. AB 141 trailer bill regarding cannabis. This establishes the Department of Cannabis Control. It's going to be called the DCC, and transfers cannabis licensing and regulatory functions to the DCC from the Bureau of Cannabis Control, from the California Department of Food and Ag, from the California Department of Public Health. Senator Wilk opposed this, as well as this trailer bill did nothing to deal with the issues related to the illicit market and the illegal grows that we're all dealing with in our community. The good news is there are other trailer bills today that will be voted on and will be addressed. And so that's what Senator Wilk has been trying very hard to get tools in there for our communities to address the illegal grows and all the problems we're having. So there's still hope. We'll see what happens tonight. AB 149 transportation continues to hold harmless and provide financial relief to transit entities impacted by COVID-19, and allows locals to continue to receive state transportation funds by adjusting maintenance of effort requirements proportionally with decreased local revenues. Senator Wilk supported this. Again, there were things in it that they attempted to remove. Number one, the excise gas tax, remove that for a year. That would have saved drivers 51 cents per gallon, reducing food prices and providing relief to Californians struggling with the higher gas prices. In other words, if we had such a huge surplus, why couldn't we hold off on that? And then AB 150, tax and revenue and taxation. That creates new tax credit programs that could provide long-term support for businesses that are slow to recover from the recent economic downturn. So while also incentivizing the hiring of homeless and individuals, this establishes a new elective tax that would reduce total federal and state taxes for S Corps in California, providing some much needed financial relief to the overtaxed Californians living in the least tax-friendly places. Senator Wilk and his caucus attempted to amend the bill to reestablish the net operating loss deduction that was suspended indefinitely in 2020 when the legislature was expecting multi-billion-dollar deficits, as opposed to the surplus that materialized. And then SB 151, economic development, that provides for several new grant programs that could support numerous struggling businesses, live venues, and performing arts centers across the state, some that have been left out of the previous fiscal relief efforts. So SB 151 also provides additional time for our nonprofits, cultural institutions to apply and receive grant funding that was approved earlier this year. I don't know if you've noticed, but we could barely just get out the information that a program or a grant was coming through for relief. And by the time you go look it up on your computer, it was already closed, it was already filled up, it had already expired. So that's good news to hear of the additional time. Senator Wilk voted yes for that bill, and I believe the majority, minority and majority all voted for that. So today, trailer bills all day today. Yesterday was the last day for bills to be out of policy committee. And after today's trailer bills, the legislature will be on a short summer recess break. When they come back, they will finish up, and then September will be all floor time. So it's showtime up there.
Hey, Rebecca, I know probably maybe everybody knows on here, but explain what a trailer bill is.
Yeah, so when the budget bill was passed, there was a clause in the state constitution that allows them to actually pass the budget, even though all the details aren't in that budget. And the majority party used that this year to pass that budget. So in a sense, they say the budget is passed, but the numbers aren't in there. And where those monies are going is not in that budget. Many called it a fake budget. But the trailer bills are where the legislature can vote on the details for those expenditures. So that's where those are coming through.
All right. Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to, even if people have heard them or knew what it was at one time, sometimes you forget. So looks like we do have a question in here from Don Brown. What are we doing about increasing water storage for the future? What are we doing about upgrading the electrical grid to handle all the electrical cars that will be going to have to start being hooking up in 5 years?
We're sending them all to Joe Brady. I see Joe raising his hand. Those are good questions. The governor has a great plan for that. I was just reading about that. We've always had a water storage problem. For years, when they would say we have a water shortage problem, our local legislators would say, you know what, being up in Sacramento, we've discovered we don't have a water shortage problem. We have a water storage problem. And so that is a big issue and concern, and that's being addressed. I don't have anything concrete on that right now. Although I did hear that's one of our problems. We concreted the bottom of the aqueduct instead of letting it go back through. And with the electrical, gosh, I don't have it right now, but where is that? Just saw it. So, Governor Newsom takes action. Okay, yeah, no, I don't have it on the electricity. That was one of the disappointing things with the governor reducing the funding to our whole our wildfire system, all that. So what is Joe Brady saying?
Rebecca, where are we today on the E-corridor? I have been told by the city of Victorville and the county transportation agency that it will probably not happen for the 8 billion price tag.
Is that the corridor across to the Antelope Valley?
Yes.
Yeah, so sometimes I hear it's going through and then sometimes I hear it's not. So if it's in financial negotiations, that's going to be a battle. But boy, that's been a long time coming. You know, those plans were written back when they wrote the plans for the 60 freeway, the 10 freeway, the 210 freeway, all that. So it's been in the plans since like the 1930s or something. So it is going to come through, but there's no telling now how long they're going to debate on the finances.
Okay. All right. Any more questions for Rebecca? Okay, great. Thank you, Rebecca.
Mhm.
Okay, Cassie Vickers, Assemblyman Thurston Smith's office. Cassie, go ahead and unmute.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. Thank you so much for having me today. So today's update is going to just go over a few of the things we touched on last month when I gave the update. So in regards to the budget, Assembly Bill 128 did get passed and by the Assembly and the Senate and did get signed by the governor. This was a bill that the Assemblyman greatly opposed as it allocated more money for homelessness initiatives, which the Assemblyman felt didn't need to happen when we could have used money that was already in the funds for projects like that. So I just wanted to reiterate his opposition to that bill. In regards to the illegal marijuana cultivation happening up in our district, he did have a town hall in Phelan this past weekend, and he did get to speak with constituents and answer questions that they had regarding the illegal marijuana. So that's what's been happening. In regards to legislation, he has continued to work with Senator Wilk's office and Assemblyman Tom Lackey to address these issues in multiple bills that will probably be out within the next year. In regards to what's been going on up here in the district, besides that, our chief of staff did present a resolution to Sheriff John McMahon on his retirement. So that was something really exciting for us to get to do. And then also last month, it was talked about with the Joshua trees and how that was a major concern for our district as we are up in the desert. So basically, Assemblyman Smith, he's opposing the California Department of Fish and Wildlife's consideration of allowing the Western Joshua tree to become a protected species under the California Endangered Species Act. This will halt shovel-ready jobs up here in our district, especially in the time where our economy isn't at its best, just post-pandemic. We really need those jobs. A way to thinking about it is if there's like a plot of land with a lot of Joshua trees on it, we won't be able to build shopping centers, which could house, 10 to 15 different restaurants and shops, and that's hundreds of jobs that won't be created up here in our district. So that's something that the Assemblyman greatly opposed. So that's all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, Cassie, thank you. I've got a question to circle back around for Rebecca, but before we do that, is there any questions for Cassie?
What's his name?
Okay, I don't see anything. It looks like, Rebecca, there's a question that says, Rebecca, I missed the item you stated about Senator Wilk opposing something on education TBL. Can you share again?
Okay.
And then Lisa Lamb said she also missed that, so.
So on education, the trailer bill that I was discussing is SB 152. And my notes say that it's a 99% good bill for education. It directs billions of dollars for education-related efforts. What Senator Wilk was trying to remove out of there is a moratorium on what they call non-classroom based charter schools. Some rural areas have a charter school that doesn't have a classroom. I don't know, mobile, they use a mobile unit or whatever it is they use. They are still under the moratoriums until 2022. And then it's been heard that their union wants it to be, or the union wants it to go beyond that. So Senator Wilk was trying to remove that from that trailer bill.
Okay,
Because
is
we have
that,
a lot of charter schools, we love our charter schools, and we do not want to hinder in any way any function of that.
okay, looks like that answered their question. Thank you, Rebecca. Here comes another question from Joe Brady. Can we ask both state representatives besides the senator and assemblyman opposing it? What are they doing? I was notified last night the decision has been moved to March 22. So what are we doing besides sending letters of opposition? Joe, are you talking about the Joshua Tree? Okay, we're going to have a whole presentation on that here in just a minute. So do you guys have anything to add to that? Okay, all right, well, we've got the experts coming in to tell us where we are. So anyway, then we're going to go ahead and move on to Kimberly Messon, Supervisor Paul Cook's office. Good morning, Kimberly.
Good morning, everyone. So I also have just a really brief update. As mentioned, John McMahon will be retiring, I believe, effective tomorrow. And then the County Board of Supervisors did elect Under Sheriff Shannon Dicus to be the new sheriff. So there was a town hall this past weekend in which many of the offices, including ours, DA Anderson, both Sheriff McMahon and Under Sheriff Shannon Dicus were present. If you go to our Facebook page, you can actually see the segments where Sheriff McMahon and DA Anderson spoke, and they addressed what they're doing and also hoping to do to address the illegal cultivation. For anyone who hasn't seen either of them speak, I highly encourage that you see those segments. They have great information that is really showing what it is that they're trying to do to address the issue and working around the unfortunately what the state has pushed down from a felony to misdemeanor, how they're working around that. I did also want to touch on, we've been getting a lot of calls asking why San Bernardino County isn't doing anything at the same level that LA County is. I actually have a few statistics I wanted to share with everyone, just to put everything into context. LA County's operation was a 1-week operation, and our marijuana enforcement team operates year-round. So I just wanted to give you some statistics. Our marijuana enforcement team has seized 303,987 plants, which is an 8% increase from the 2020 pace, where they seized 558,854 plants. They've made 165 arrests, which is a rate of 45% higher than last year, and served 189 search warrants. LA County's 1-week operation actually only served 30 search warrants. So while we might not get as much media coverage as LA County, we did just want to let everyone know that our team works year-round every day, and they are doing everything that they can. And unlike LA County, I think we're in an advantage because we have full support from our DA, our sheriff, our county board of supervisors, our state senate, and federal elected officials. So we really are trying to work together to tackle this. But other than that, that's the only update I have. If anyone has any specific questions, feel free to let me know.
All right, any questions for Kimberly? Okay. All right, so we're going to move on to our special guests today. So we know that for a long time we've had, I remember when I first moved to the high desert, even the Joshua Tree was an issue then when we built a house. Obviously back then, the the builders would kind of wink, wink and water your plant and it would fall over and then you removed it. Well, that is not the way of now. Big fines, big things that are having happen that are inhibiting not only single family construction, but also commercial. And this is based on a projection that the Joshua tree is going to become extinct or needs to become an endangered species. So what we try to do here at the Chamber, so what we've done is we, actually the Inland Empire Chamber wrote a letter last year in June when this crossed our desk. And so the 19 member Chamber Alliance down there wrote a letter actually on this issue. We did not have a meeting last month, but we're going to take it back for a follow-up from that 19 chambers. Just with the Greater High Desert Chamber of Commerce, we represent 650 businesses plus. And when you add in all of those other Inland Empire chambers, you can see there's a lot of strength within that body. So we'll circle back around on that. Obviously, I've been on the phone with our electeds to work with them to see what we can do with letters and where we need to be and what we can do. We have also, like Kathy from Assemblyman Smith's office said, we've got some letters, some joint letters that'll be going out. But I was introduced to CIMA this week, and they know where we are, what we should be doing, what the stages are. So instead of having people go, okay, this is what's happening, this is all of this, I wanted it to come straight from the experts' mouths, and they can tell us where we are in the process, what we can do that will be effective, and they have the information as to where we need to go to do whatever we need to do. So we've spent a significant amount of time on this, Mark and I, this month. So we're very glad to have Suzanne Seivright-Sutherland and Kerry Shapiro from CalCIMA. So whichever one of you that would like to start, what we're going to do on this, you guys, is you can put a question in the chat. And as I said, Marshall and Mark are watching it. If you feel like you need to speak, raise your hand. And just please be concise though, because we always try to get people out of here in a timely manner. So we're going to go ahead and turn it over to you, either one of you, whoever would like to start. And you can go ahead and unmute. Before you start, looks like there was one last question in here. Tiffany Jones, has anyone considered legalizing the dispensaries in more cities in the high deserts? Why are we refusing much needed tax revenue? Tiffany, I think that is probably would go to the cities. Am I correct on that, you guys? Cassie, Kim, I'm seeing shaking heads, Rebecca. That would be a question that you would want to take to your local city councils on that. And if you need any contacts or which one you would like to go to, reach out to Mark or I, and we will get you in touch with them, okay? All right. Okay, Suzanne, it is all yours.
All right, pleasure to be here with you all. As Shannon mentioned, I'm Suzanne Seivright-Sutherland. I work with California Construction and Industrial Materials Association. Our members provide the rock, sand, and gravel to build the state's infrastructure. We also have several members that provide precious mineral resource that facilitates our modern living. I'm joined by our legal counsel, Kerry Shapiro from Jeffrey Mangels. He's worked with CalCIMA hand in hand on several policy issues and legal issues over the years, and I appreciate his support with this one with Joshua Tree. It's very pertinent to our members in the high desert communities. So I'm going to provide a brief update regarding the petition to list the Western Joshua Tree under CISA, the California Endangered Species Act. I wonder if that is my speaker or somebody else's. That might be, hold on. Ha, I've got authority to mute people. Thank you, Shannon. I think I found out who that was. So I'm going to provide you kind of more along the lines of a very brief tutorial as far as how this process works, where we're at. We're going to have like some issue discussion, and I'll start there. I'll be turning a portion of this discussion like over to our legal counsel, Kerry Shapiro, and then I'll take the mic back, and we're going to have some more discussion or light discussion about where exactly we are today with the process. And what I think a lot of folks want to understand is, how this process is going to impact operations right now and if the species is listed. So let's jump right into the issue discussion just to make sure that we're all kind of more closely on the same page as far as understanding the background. So CISA has a two-step process for listing a species as threatened or endangered. The first step, the Fish and Game Commission determines whether to designate a species as a candidate by evaluating whether the petition provides information indicating that the action may be warranted. And the key word there is may. The second step is that the Fish and Game Commission determines whether to list the species based on a peer-reviewed report inclusive of available scientific information indicating whether the petition action is warranted. All right, so that's the two-step process for getting any species listed. Since 2008, all species petitioned for listing under the California Endangered Species Act by environmental groups has been successful. 7 species have been listed since 2008. Several species are pending listing right now. And this trend began in 2008 with the Court of Appeals decision in the Center for Biological Diversity and Fish and Game Commission. This decision eased the requirements for the Fish and Game Commission to accept a petition for candidacy. So if you've been hearing that there's a low bar to just get through the first step of this process, this is the court decision that made that allowable, I guess you could say. The Fish and Game Commission has indicated that it will accept all petitions for candidacy in order to avoid litigations from environmental organizations. And again, I'm just going to emphasize that's what they've indicated. And it's really at your discretion as far as how you want to observe how things have unfolded over the years. Specific to the Western Joshua Tree petition, CalCIMA as well as other petition opponents argued that the petition lacked statutorily required scientific information. It lacked an adequate discussion regarding the species' response to threats. And it also lacked existing management regulations because we don't feel that the management regulations that were implemented by the counties, cities, other regional authorities were adequately discussed or really considered for that fact. Despite these arguments, the Fish and Game Commission has accepted the petition, in part because the Fish and Game Commission believes climate change will impact the species. And that was a huge part of the discussion leading up to their determination to move on to the second step. So CalCIMA and its partners is in litigation with the commission in order to challenge the Western Joshua Tree petition and prevent the Fish and Game Commission from accepting petitions to list the species under CISA without meaningful review. As the Fish and Game Commission demonstrated that, we just feel that with the Western Joshua Tree moving it so quickly and easily and according to us, inadequately from the first step to the second, it does set a precedence for all species that may be petitioned for going forward. Kerry, if I can turn it over to you to give a little bit more information on this litigation, and then we can circle back and kind of talk about the second step with the science.
Sure. So thanks, Suzanne. Again, my name is Kerry Shapiro. I'm an attorney at Jeffer Mangels, Butler, and Mitchell in San Francisco. I'm also general counsel for CalCIMA, and I represent CalCIMA on the litigation that is pending in Fresno Superior Court right now. As Suzanne alluded to, the Fish and Game Commission accepted the listing petition, which is the first step in the final listing process. And because of what we believe was an absence of statutorily required information that was considered by the commission in making its decision to accept the species as a candidate species, we filed a lawsuit. It's styled as a petition for writ of mandate in Fresno County Superior Court last fall. That case is still pending. We originally sought to try to stay this second half of the process pending the resolution of the lawsuit. However, the judge felt that there was no prejudice to the final listing process if a stay was not granted. So the judge has allowed the second half of the listing process to go forward, and Suzanne will get to that in a minute, while we proceed with the lawsuit. As far as where we are with the litigation, the final decision will be based on what is known as an administrative record. that is developed in terms of comments and responses and other information considered by the Fish and Game Commission in making that decision to list as a candidate species. The administrative record has been prepared by the Fish and Game Commission's attorneys, which are the Attorney General's office. We're in the process of setting a schedule for legal briefing on the matter. That will probably take 3 or 4 months to complete the briefing. We expect to be done briefing on the case by the early fall, and then the court will schedule a hearing date on our lawsuit, probably sometime in the mid to late fall of 2021, and that will conclude the lawsuit. Obviously two results, winning or losing. If we win the lawsuit, that will mean that the commission's decision to accept the petition for the species as a candidate was inadequate, and therefore there will be no final listing process. They will essentially have to go back to the drawing board and do a new listing petition. If we are not successful in the lawsuit, then the process to complete the final listing will just continue on its course as it currently is. This lawsuit is kind of an interim lawsuit challenging the first step in listing to establish candidacy, and it's going on in parallel with the final listing process. So that's the status of that lawsuit right now. And any questions, I'd be happy to address them.
Thank you, Kerry. All right, so as mentioned right now, the petition to list the Western Joshua Tree is in the second step of this two-step process. This second step calls for the California Fish and Game Commission to determine whether to list the species based on a peer-reviewed status report compiled by the California Department of Fish and Game. California Department of Fish and Wildlife. And this will include available scientific information indicating whether the petition action is warranted. California Department of Fish and Wildlife, their status review report was due on October the 9th of this year. They extended this due date for 6 months, so the new due date is April 2022, leading up to, I guess, like the finalization of this status review report. California Department of Fish and Wildlife formally requested data or comments regarding the Western Joshua Tree. Several entities provided information. CDFW, California Department of Fish and Wildlife, asked for this information to be submitted by this past January to ensure that they had enough time to review the data. And then they extended that due date to May. However, after this date, data and comments are still continuing to be received and evaluating leading up to the deadline. And there is no affirmative that data that submit after May will be referenced or how it will be discussed within the report. But one thing is certain is that it will be part of the petition's final record, which is very important. So right now, CalCIMA is developing data that may likely, I want to say very likely, be submit to CDFW to support the final record. I'm not going to discuss a lot to do with right now, and it's still under attorney-client privilege at this point. But moving into like the last part of this discussion, I know that there are several operations that have questions related to how this process specifically impacts their facilities. So during the process, the species is treated as threatened, which means that it does defer to the California Endangered Species Act. There's specific processes, I want to say, that are clarified for certain industries, sometimes certain entities, for how take of the species can be achieved. If the species is listed, which means that the Joshua Tree goes through this whole process, determined to be threatened or endangered, now listed with California Endangered Species Act, the management of the species will be transferred from local authority to state authority through the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. We don't know exactly how management would be implemented. There will be a Section 2081 incidental take permit process. I mean, that would follow. And we don't know exactly what that language would look like. And there may be other processes that are used to support this incidental take permit, such as a regional conservation investment strategy. So all of that is very gray. Kerry, do you want to add any additional feedback on impacts, or do you think we're good to open this up for Q&A? Because that might be the best way to get info to folks.
I'd like to add just a couple of things about the meaning of having achieved candidacy status, which you've alluded to, but I want to be very clear for everybody on this call that unlike a federal endangered species listing process, CISA, California Endangered Species Act, has a different way of treating candidate species. So when the commission voted to accept the listing petition of the Joshua tree, Western Joshua tree, as a candidate species, at that point, under the law, it is treated as if it's a fully listed threatened species, meaning no longer any take immediately after that date. And you must get an incidental take permit under 2081, Section 2081 of the Fish and Game Code. So you have to think of that species right now as if it's a threatened species under CISA, and all the take limitations and incidental take requirements apply. We tried to stop that in that lawsuit, but the court let that
Kerry,
proceed.
Just to clarify, I think 2084 for during the process, and then 2081.
2084 is a legislative relief that would give you programmatic ability to make a take for any covered activities within a 2084 process. But you still need a 2081 permit for an individual project if you're not within the 2084 legislative process. There's a lot of, in other words, the state recognized the prejudice or impact of immediate listing under candidacy. And there's two ways you can proceed with some type of activity. One is you get your 2081 permit. And I know this is a lot of technical stuff, and we provided a 2-page primer for your committee that you may want to refer to, that identifies on page 2 the ways in which you can get through the 2081 process. That's an incidental take process. What Suzanne is referring to is there's a special interim process called 2084. It refers to Section 2084 of the Fish and Game Code that allows the commission to adopt an emergency regulation that says certain activities covered within the language of that 2084 rule are programmatically exempt and allowed to take without needing a project-specific 2081 permit. And there has been some enactment by the commission of certain 2084 regulations that would need to be reviewed specifically with respect to your activity to see if you fall within that. If you do not fall within that, then you have to, if you're going to take Joshua Tree during this candidacy period, you would need a specific project-specific 2081 permit. So I just wanted to emphasize that right now, treat the species as if it's a final listed species unless it is resolved in our favor without a final listing or litigation. The second point I wanted to get to, as far as the comment process that Suzanne referenced, we hope that the data, the science developed by CalCIMA's consultants and others that is put into the record persuades the department and the commission not to do a final listing. However, if we are unsuccessful in doing that, and it is listed as finally as a threatened species, there's a probability that there will be legal action taken. And what we found in the first half, when we filed our lawsuit, there was a lot of interest in pursuing or joining in the lawsuit, because the more petitioners there are in the lawsuit, the stronger the case is to the court. However, you have to do something called exhausting remedies to participate in a litigation, meaning you have to comment or participate in the administrative process, submitting comments or testifying in order to have standing to join a lawsuit. And there were people that wanted to join our lawsuit that didn't do that, so they lacked standing. So for people on this call or this association that might consider wanting to participate in litigation, if there is a final listing, please keep in mind that you only are allowed legally to participate in a lawsuit if you have first commented into the administrative record with a letter or public testimony in order to give you standing to have exhausted your administrative remedy to participate in the legal remedy. I just want to make sure people don't get caught a year from now having wanted to participate but being shut out of the process because they didn't join. So those were just the 2 points I wanted to get: immediate candidacy status, meaning immediate take requirements, and exhaustion and standing. So I'll turn it back over to Suzanne.
So Suzanne, we've got a couple of questions. Maybe we can kind of break right here and answer those as we're kind of going through that. So the first one, and then we'll move on from there. We've got one here that says, how about the impact on providing affordable housing to our population? We've got another one that says, does the Victor Valley have infrastructure to handle all the new housing being built, especially our streets and freeways? The dates again, we've got one in here. I was notified last night by a major developer that Fish and Wildlife, you had mentioned, Suzanne, on it's been extended to April 22. Are we now talking about May 22 or is that April 22? I mean, my experience with lawsuits is that they can always extend it. But right now you're to April 22. And then we have a final comment that says, so at this time, we as developers know that the Joshua Tree on our site is a death sentence to the project. Getting a take permit is 6 to 8% chance after spending hundreds of thousands of dollars, assuming 10 to 15 trees minimum. What can we as the builders do to help cancel the listing? This literally has stopped development in its tracks for most of us. We alone have canned millions of dollars in development alone. So if we're impacted, write a letter, make public comment. Is that what you're saying? So looks like everybody, as you know, we have a housing shortage, and this is not going to help it. So maybe address, that and where we're going on that. And then as you if what I heard correctly is, Kerry, do they need to make public comment if they want to join into this lawsuit, or where are they now?
Okay.
We are in a public comment period right now, as Suzanne referenced. There will be several opportunities to comment in different ways. Right now, you're commenting prior to the department preparing its report, which is basically our staff report for the commission. So right now, if you comment, you will try to influence that report. Then the draft report will come out and you can comment on the draft report, okay? And then finally, after the draft report is revised and submitted to the commission for consideration, you can comment on the ultimate listing. And that will be later in the year or early next spring. But when your member said, what can we do about this? The answer is get involved in the administrative process. And I don't mean just for standing. I think that the competing public policies of housing need is compelling to have in the record for both the commission and a court to consider, although it's not technically the issue. This is a science-based issue about species, but it is a factor, a social policy factor that would be helpful to have in the record, regardless of whether you ultimately want to file a lawsuit. But you also need to comment in order to be able to file a lawsuit. So we encourage.
Question.
Yeah, go ahead.
On your primer here, as we're going to send this out, this is being recorded, so it'll send out so people can refer back to the steps. On the primer, does this give them, I've looked through it, but is there a contact, or where would they go to start getting involved in this process?
That's interesting.
When you say start, I guess, get into this process, I mean, is that just to begin commenting administratively?
Yeah, if they want to make comments, I know, sometimes writing letters feels, I mean, we write letters, but it feels very ineffective. Is that a good, are we doing good by doing that right now? Or have we moved to the next step? Sometimes people just need the steps. Everybody focus on this step right now and go to this place and make comment or whatever. What would be for these people on the call right now, that place to go? Do they join up with you guys or go to your website, or what's the best step?
I would say that right now, if you have a facility or operation that has some type of scientific data, this would be the period to submit that scientific data, because that's really what they're accepting comment on right now. Once the report is like compiled and released to the public, they're going to open up a public comment period, and that might be another opportunity, or I guess you could say it is another commenting period, but that is the period where you may want to talk about these additional impacts like affordable housing, in addition to what your thoughts are on this review process. I think CalCIMA working with the chamber, just keeping in dialogue related to these timelines related to providing comment is something that we can do if that works for the chamber.
Okay, yeah, we can definitely do that. And then we can get that information out to the members so they can, when we get to that public comment. I do know High Desert Association of Realtors have a lawsuit going. Obviously, I don't know if they're part of yours or they're on their own. And it's coming from a lot of different directions. But that keeps being the comment in the thing here. How to comment as that we as developers can circulate among our peers, and where do we go to comment?
All right, and then I saw some of the questions that you had mentioned, Shannon, in the chat, and I just wanted to touch on a few of them. Someone had asked about the impact on providing affordable housing to our population, and it seemed like they were asking about, why isn't this maybe a stronger consideration? And the reason for that is if you look at California state statute, and Kerry, you are the expert on this, so please stop me if I'm just saying something incorrect, but as I understand it, if you look at the state statute that authorizes California Fish and Game Commission, as well as California Department of Fish and Wildlife, when they are reviewing species for prospective listing in CISA, they're really only looking at the threat to the species. There is no discussion within that language about external factors as far as impacts to business, affordable housing. I mean, there isn't other discussion that those two state entities are required to address. I mean, outside of, what is the threat to the species? That is all that they're required to focus on. Kerry, do you understand that the same way? Did I explain that?
Yeah, this is certainly, as Suzanne says, a science-driven process. So it's not like a hearing on a subdivision where people will talk about, the sort of societal effects, or whether it's in keeping with the neighborhood or the local community. This is based on the science of whether it meets the criteria for a threatened species. And right now, the comments that would be submitted by people, if they wanted to be submitted, would best be prepared by a professional consultant that is understanding of endangered species and how these, or threatened species, and how they would, whether this species qualifies, and what the data and science is. That's what they're looking for now, because the comments are going to be considered by the department in preparing its technical report. So it's got to be based on science and fact. I will say that as you get close to the hearing, not the development of the report, but you're later on next, I'm talking about April, May, June of 2022, when the report is completed and the commission is considering a final decision, you're going to get a lot of comments from people on both sides of this issue that aren't necessarily just technical science-driven comments. And there will be room for some discussion, because the commission are human beings. and they're not just scientists, and they will want to understand some of those impacts. It's something that is part of the overall background in the consideration, the impact on housing and the like.
Right. I mean, there
So if you-
seems to be value in providing information about impacts to affordable housing. I mean, you have to also recognize, I mean, how many people are going to be exposed to this information that you would be supplying. It's, you know, you have these two state entities. I mean, you don't know in the future how their responsibilities, how they are directed, you know, in California state statutes, you know, to do their operations. So, I mean, it seems like there is some value, I mean, in supplying that information at the right time.
So Suzanne, so
And-
just to recap, right now, for like the builders that are asking questions that are on this call right now, we've got some lenders, we've got, you know, brokers, commercial brokers, we've got a variety of people. So right now, with all the different lawsuits that are going on and everything, we're in the science period. So if the builders wanted to get together and, you know, come up with their own science, that is the phase that we're in right now, correct, Kerry and Suzanne? Okay, so some kind of joint report that would be submitted, and that is the phase we are in. The next phase would be when we start to talk about affordable housing, what it's doing to business, all of those things, correct? So we're in these last two phases. Is that, am I reading that right?
Yeah, I would just say that the first phase is going to be 90% of the time from now until, you know, the spring of 2022, the science phase. And then only when you get past the report, which is a long process, a year-long process, would there be an opportunity for more general comments to be submitted to the commission.
Okay, so we could reach out to you guys to make sure we're in the loop of when those periods of comment are coming out, and then we could reach out to you for guidance as to where to go, correct?
Yes, absolutely. I also saw there were several questions about existing projects. Kerry, I want to ask for your feedback on this, but it seems that, you know, if you have trees now that require take in some format, I don't want to say that the project, I mean, would be on hold until this is resolved, but can you give some feedback? I mean, if you needed to take a Joshua tree now to move forward with the project, I mean, do you go to the county like you typically would, or to the state? And it seems unclear sometimes when I am talking to the county and state as to what today's process is, or if it is truly just on hold until this is resolved.
It's a great question, because that's really the practical impact of being a candidate species on a particular project. And that's very important rather. And as I said, you have to think about the species now as if it's a finally listed threatened species, because that's what it is during candidacy. It means you cannot take Joshua tree unless you get approvals for it. And there are two ways you can be authorized. You need to look at the specifics of your project and see if it is within the umbrella, if you will, of any of the interim 2084 regulations. For, I think there was one for de minimis developments, maybe single family. I have to go back and check the language specifically, because we focus more on the mining projects, but right. I know there was some effort to develop some, you know, relief for certain small type projects. I think there was relief for solar projects as a specific category of uses. So those get sort of a free pass, if you will, during the candidacy period. If you don't fall within those 2084, Section 2084 broad regulations, then you have to work with Fish and Game, the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. And you have to, technically, you have to get a take permit before you can take a species. Now, I know from dealing with the department that they are mindful that this requirement, this candidacy requirement, is kind of coming out of nowhere for projects that are ongoing. And so they're trying not to have very prejudicial impact. So there's room to try to work with the department and the lead agency, the local lead agency, to try to develop a program where you can avoid to the maximum extent you can, but they will allow a certain amount of take while you're going through the 2081 process to get your permit. But it's going to be something where you're going to have to reach out to the department and try to work through a interim relief for your project. Most likely, though, they will try to issue some form of 2081 permit for you. I would not recommend anybody going and continue thinking you're grandfathered out of that because you have an ongoing project. You will need to get authorization to take Joshua Tree now. You can't just go do that.
One of our builders that's on the call right now, he said, unless you have an approved project plan, study, and relocation plan prior to the temp listing, you are on hold or you need to take a permit.
He's saying that if you're in the middle of the process, you do need to get the 2081 permit. That's what I agree with that.
Okay.
I don't know that you're necessarily on hold. You just can't take, if on hold means, your project design requires taking permits, taking trees to move forward, then, you are on hold. But if you can, pursue other elements of the project without taking the Joshua Tree, and I don't know if that is feasible for any particular project, it doesn't mean your project is on hold. It just means you can't take trees.
There might be some value in connecting with the county directly about who fits into the current 2084 scope to understand specifically what projects can get some level of take for the Joshua trees, but I would defer to the county to provide that guidance to you directly.
Okay, that's good. All right, we have reached our 10 o'clock hour. Are there you guys have been a wealth of information. Like I said, we wanted to provide steps and where we were. I believe you guys have done that and have given us a place to go. It's very frustrating for everybody involved, and just as it is for you guys. We could go on the frustration level for probably another hour if we wanted to, but what are the steps that we can do right now? And I believe you've given those to us. Are there any further questions before we let these guys go? Mark will be posting the recording. We will also be handing out the primer that you guys did. It's very nice, it's very concise. And then if it's okay, we'll give, Suzanne, would you be the contact if people have questions?
Yes, and I can,
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll send your information out also. And then you guys have a website also. Is this on it or any of the steps on there?
It's calcima.org, but I don't see our
anything.
I don't see that on here. I apologize.
Okay. That's all right. That's all right. So I just want to the job of us of the High Desert Greater High Desert Chamber of Commerce is to be a resource, and so I think we've done that today. So I don't see any other questions. Is there anything anybody would like to say before we go ahead and close out the meeting? I see a big thank you from Chad Schulz. As I said, he's with one of our builders of Cornerstone. Like as I said, we're not giving up. There's letters going out, things like that. We're hoping that we can get ahead of this and do what we can to get through this issue. All right, if nothing else, thank you for being here. Very, very good meeting, and we will see you next month.
Thank you, everybody, for being here.
You all take care.
Take care.
Thanks, everyone.